Hello, people. Good morning. Welcome to our first pop session from 2018. My name is Julieta Campos, and I am pop director. I will be hosting you today. We will start a series of sessions. So the first one today is, as you know, it's current approaches to poverty reduction. So, um, please have in mind if you want to join us at our pop portal, you can visit us to www.yoropop.net and also our organization site, which is www.yoroworld.org. You can find it on the left side of this session, which we have the chatting area, so you can place any question, comments, or whatever you want to share with the session. Today also you will hear probably a background noise as I am in Mar del Plata, Argentina, and it was hard to find a few places, with proper technology. So for today, will be a little more noisier. So thanks for being here also. We will start right away sharing some ideas and our things about how we can approach uh, better ways to go to goal one from Agenda 2030, which is, 2030, which is poverty reduction, as I said before. So this would be like an overview about the topic, and we will go deeper in further sessions. Okay, so uh, poverty actually is being measured in different ways. The organizations, the nations, and activists uh, have very, very different realities to face when facing issues about poverty. And I want to share with you how it's measuring poverty. There is no a single root, it's not a single cause that causes poverty in the world. So, what is useful is to have an idea of the measures on what to look for when you are into a poverty crisis, into a poverty community, or with people living in the poorest condition. Okay. Um, the current status of poverty is measured with an index called multidimensional poverty index, which is an index that was agreed internationally and is analyzed globally, regionally, and locally with different organizations in different countries. On these sessions, we will share the current status of the fight against poverty reduction at worldwide level, like an overview in general, and taking as our leading parameter the IMP, which is the shortened name for Multidimensional Poverty Index, which I was talking to you before. And I will share the labor of some activists that are dealing with this problem and what they do and what are the challenges they face to solve goal one of the Millennium Development Goals from this Agenda 2030, which is Agenda 2030 in Spanish. And then we will go further from this. So, what is the MPI? The MPI is at general level like a kind of report, which includes parameters of income with other kind of restrictions people suffer, like uh, that affect them worldwide. Okay, there is like 10 general indicators we can have in mind to measure or to approach uh, to this MPI level or indices. The first measure we have to take into account is education. The MPI takes into account the level and the years of education of people. let's say if a member of a family, for example, has completed less than 5 years of education, or any children within a family is not educated, means it cannot access to school, it's considered a measure that leads to poverty. Other thing it's measured is sanitary aid and health. So the MPI measures children mortality, and it says if at least one kid is dead on a family, there you have an indicator that the family is within a poverty environment. Also with nutrition, if people doesn't have access to basic nutrition, or if the kid or an adult on a family suffers of malnutrition, it indicates they are into a poverty situation. So it also measures the quality of life of people, the social life and wellness. For example, if a family doesn't have access to electricity, it also means they are under poverty conditions. Sanitation. What it's about sanitation? Well, let's say if the place the people lives in doesn't have a bathroom, or if they share a bathroom, actually, if they don't have drinkable water, if they don't have enough fuel or energy to feed a house, for example, a kitchen, uh, whether it is carbon, wood, or other resources, it means that family or that person is living under poverty conditions. Also with goods. Nowadays, it's considered that if a people doesn't have access to a radio, TV, telephone, bike, or motorbike, then that person is living under poverty conditions. So, um, those were one of the few indices I wanted to share for the first 10 out of 10 from the MPI. The MPI really it's multidimensional, as you could see. It covers a lot of topics. I would like to know if anyone has or had idea about these MPI indices, these MPI reports, if you knew about that. And so far, how do you think it's the MPI level in your country or in your area? We live in different areas in the world, and as we said before, as it's multidimensional, the poverty roots and the poverty causes would be fine or would be interesting to share with the audience, if you like, how is it goes in your area. For example, in Argentina, I can talk about Greater Buenos Aires, which is an area that suffers a few of these indexes I mentioned before. A lot of people in Greater Buenos Aires has not access, for example, to resources to fuel the house. Um, we know about a lot of families that cannot even cook any single meal because they don't have how to access to it. They don't have access to water, to drinkable water, actually. So that's only in a province in Buenos Aires. And we are in Argentina, 22 provinces facing similar issues. Okay. So to recap, a person is considered as poor if it has not access to at least of the 30% of the mentioned indicators. The level of poverty or intensity indicates the proportion of the indicators to which people has not access. So far, this is an overview, as I said before. So I encourage you to go deeper on these indicators and have a more updated approach into the reality of poverty and how to deal with the goal one of the Agenda 2030. Um, to go a little further, I would like to share uh, some experiences from different regions and organizations. It was on June from 2017, a new report published about the IPM or MIP, whether it's in English or in Spanish, the shorter name. It was also launched the first discussion regarding children poverty for each country, finding that half of poor people, according to the MPI index, between 103 countries reported, were children. So this is a new concern we have to be very aware of. Um, the new report researched the poverty between 5.4 thousand million of people. From this figure, the 1.45 thousand million people are poor. It means about 26 5 point, point 5, sorry, of people living in 103 countries. Close to 48% of poor people were in Asia, Meridional, and 36% in Sub-Saharan Africa. More than 1,000 million of poor people, according to the MPI, lives in countries with middle income. Those are figures. It gives us the chance to figure out a little more where are the regions, are the areas of the world more affected by poverty. Fulfilling the ODS, which are the Millennium Development Goals, of ending poverty in all its ways and dimensions, the global MPI complements the measure based on income and, as I told you, measuring directly 10 indicators reflecting bad health conditions, lack of education, and low standard quality of life. In 2017, more researching were added for Algeria and El Salvador, and statistics from MPI from other 23 countries, including China, India, Mexico, South Africa, were also considered. I should add that this means the reports are updated each period because poverty is not something static or fixed. Poverty changes and moves. Also, the conditions that are measured, get added because nowadays conditions change constantly for everyone. So for poverty communities and the poverty indexes too. Going back to the most poor people, the Department of International Development from Oxford University, which is one of the institutions that promotes this multidimensional poverty index and this type of researching, found that almost half of all poor people, according to the MPI, which was 706 million, are indigents, are people in extreme poverty condition. That means that they experiment extreme privation, severe malnutrition, the highest index of people living under extreme poverty are found in sub-Saharan Africa, being the more affected India with 295 million people on the extreme poverty level. So we are talking about serious conditions. Going back to the 103 countries of low and mid-income analyzed, children are 34% of the total population. However, they represent the 48% of the poor in general. So children is a big concern. Childhood is a big concern when we are talking about poverty. And I would like to the audience to encourage to go deeper about this issue with children. We, we know or we say that children are our future. So how the future would be if we don't put our hands on trying to reduce poverty or extreme poverty conditions for those children living in that way. Um, Furthermore, it's 2 out of 5 children, which means 37% of the total of the children living in this world, are multidimensional poor. This reality leads us to the following topic that I would like to share with you in the sessions. And it has to do with the impact that it's been generating for activists and the activists to create consciousness over poverty reduction as a way to build peace. What are doing the activists today on the field of poverty reduction? Okay, it's a lot being done, and I will share few examples, few experiences. The first one from Argentina, which is regarding poverty and health. It's about an organization called Corriente Villera. Corriente Villera is a social organization that was created at Villa 11114, it's called like that, 1114, from the city of Buenos Aires. Most of its inhabitants live on poverty or under the line of poverty, which means extreme poverty conditions. In this scenario, a lot of people working on the health area were conscious of each difficulty and the lack of answer from the government regarding health care. So the organization, this group of people, get organized and started their activism protesting before the government, claiming for resources for primary health care and emergency health care at the villa. It turned out that since 2014 till today, they didn't receive any answer from any government, but they got organized and implemented an emergency service, a health service, both ambulances, and were present and still are present as a reference in emergency and systems of healthcare assistance in villas. This gave place to a different level of aid, and they also were have as reference from different nurse schools. They consider this organization as a reference, and they send their students from the nursing school to have their internships in the villas with this Corriente Villera organization. As consequence of these actions, they established also a lunch area to feed people with what they call it solidarity soups. And they assist not only on health emergencies, but they are also educating now and also feeding people. So this was a very nice example I found I wanted to share because it started as a creative answer from the people that actually was living that reality or suffering that reality. Well, this was from Argentina, but I have also an experience from Ethiopia, which is related to poverty and disability. And I will share with you the links where you can find the whole contents and the websites, so you can go deeper. But in Ethiopia, where I was looking to have a more updated insight about poverty and inclusion, this was a very interesting story about self-experience of an activist struggling with poverty and inclusion before becoming an activist herself. I have get her story from this activist from Like the World organization. I will write down here, Like the World organization. You can Google it, but I will give you the links to the website. And I knew about Yet Never Nigusie, I expect to pronounce it fine, where she advocates and works on this organization. It's an African woman that is blind. In her native country, Ethiopia, her parents had to face an enormous quantity of challenges regarding the disability of this daughter, which was blind, and was stressed by the lack of resources, proper medical attention, circumstances that made her, being a girl, uh, being sent to a convent with a place, a religious place, 800 kilometers away, to have the chance to be educated and attended in this religious institution or shelters for children with disabilities, because in Ethiopia, if you were born a baby girl and you are disabled, you don't have so much chance to survive or to improve your reality. So what Yetneber's parents did, sent her to this place. She grown up in a context that when she was a teenager was determined to be an activist. She involved herself on topics as inclusion, poverty, gender violence, and at university years she found and was member of several organizations, developing a conscious activism, a consent activism. Uh, she went so far committing to this activism that the 1st of December on 2017, she received the Alternative Nobel Prize for her fight for inclusion. So it was a great experience for me to share and to let you know that you can create consciousness whether you are experiencing uh, extreme poverty conditions or different poverty conditions or not. It's not that you need to have the whole reality, the planets in line to do something, right? So I will pass here on the chat box on the right side of your area the link to Light for the World organization. In case you have to find out more information, or maybe you have the motivation to do something to help to spread the word, whatever, you can find more in this website. Other example uh, was in India. I found something related to poverty and the right to food. Each example has to do with one of the multidimensional poverty indexes I mentioned it before. India is amongst the countries with the highest indices of multidimensional poverty, where one of the main indexes to measure is the access to food and water. A lot of leaders and organizations and people in India are aware of the extreme urgency that sometimes arises as a result of these situations. And while was reading some material about how India was dealing with this through different places, I was searching for updates on this topic, and I found the story of Rudaya Hoti, who is an activist and director of Udayani Social Action Forum. I will copy here for you the link of the social forum and the website. Okay. Uh, Ruta Hoti knows the achievements and difficulty that arise on the campaigns to raise awareness about the right to access to food, mainly led by women in India. The movement for the right to food started on the area in 2001, where after a lack of water, a lot of people starved and died, while tons of food were kept out without distribution in the stores of the Food Corporation in India. As you can notice, uh, there is multiple causes that led a lot of people to found dead in very severe conditions. Um, the food corporation in India that was keeping the food out of distribution, it's a state corporation that works under the system of public distribution in charge of the food ministry in India. India is a country with the major number of sub-feeded people in the world according to the FAO, which is the International Organization for Agriculture. And this was a report, a measured report from 2014. The Global Index of Hunger, which is a specific index about food, placed India under the category of severe, in the place of 97 out of 118 countries in the world. So you can figure out how hard it can be. The national law of security food in India was launched in 2013, giving a theoretical frame based on a public system of distribution for food. But it was for a short time, for a short period of time. Um, the organization Calcutta Undone says this is not the problem, the lack of food. Instead, it's a problem of food distribution, a problem of inequality, and an unfair distribution of resources. India is the super country of hunger nowadays. And this also was the title of the presentation for a campaign that the NGO launched uh, to raise awareness. In the web of the organization can be read, in spite of India continues growing economically, its social indexes are getting worse and even worse that most of the neighborhood countries that are having a big economic boost, as an example of Bangladesh and Pakistan. So they are really focusing on raise awareness. And they also started the empowerment process for people, launching a project of empowerment of Udayani on the India state of West Bengal. What's focused it's based on human rights. They were collectively organized through women associations and federations to vindicate the rights to the leaders' Pacific fight for the fulfillment of their rights. According to one of the representatives, it can be said that the movement as women's movement. So you have here uh, different situations where people uh, are aware that they can do something about it and they have to raise awareness. But in the meantime, they have to empower themselves. Okay. So we said this was about food, right? And now come into the scene women. Why? Because in India, women also the is aware more aware of how distribution of food is made. They are in charge to distribute, to check out what is needed, what is missing. And they have a big issue now that the government in India suspended in practices the control office for food distribution. In this context, on the 27th of April on 2017, there were a big protest led by this organization before the government to wait for a new list of representatives designed by the government, generating an, unhap- an unhappiness as they put emphasis that the government must give food to people that is not receiving it. Uh, they take action about this situation, and this action implies to question the government directly on the said matter being held accountable. Calcutta has more than 5,000 active women participate. The food, as is not distributed adequately and the rights are not guaranteed, made them to raise their voice. The leaders remarks that all demands are based on current laws and the constitution and the rights in their towns. So they are doing it uh, effectively, organized, and also uh, being activist and being inspiration for other women and for other organizations. The question on this sense is how vulnerable people are protected from decisions from the local governments, in this case from Bengala, when they close the office of food distribution. In the words of the activists, we can say that nobody will think on poor people till the poor people thinks about themselves. This keep us thinking. Sometimes it's tended to think for the others. And these organizations and this group of women uh, have the experience themselves that the people that actually is suffering for these different kind of situations needs to raise their voice, needs to be very aware, and needs to act. This is a powerful message. I will share it again. In words of these activists, we can say that nobody will think on poor people till the poor people don't start thinking about themselves. The poor, the rural sector basically, and other minorities has been marginalized from the process of development and growth. They have to organize and demand. There is no other choice. The people has to get organized and defend their rights to live in this sense. As well known that also most of the people involved depends on agricultural life, especially in those areas, and wants the land for their own. And that is an anti-people politics, what is going through in India. A massive movement also will help to reach the fulfillment of their own rights for this kind of population. And the contribution to the process is give people the acknowledgement about the available rights in their country. So the people in the organization say we are just claiming what is our in a public way pacifically. And our main role is a mediators and carry this acknowledgement to the people so they know what is being done and they know what the organizations are doing also. Um, This was very interesting, and I would like to ask you, do you know any organization or activist would you like to share with this audience with us in the session? Do you know any action that it's been taken that you consider it worth to share, to, to introduce? Please feel free to place it here on the chat box or send us the information, contact us to our pages, because there is a lot that it's been done, there is a lot that is happening. Um, I believe it's essential that we can share all these kind of situations and information. Uh, it's a, an important step to know what is going through so we know what it can be done and how we can help, or at least spread the word, which is very important. So, why the end of poverty is essential to peace building? I would like to start sharing with you this site. I will read it. It says, without peace, there can be no development. Without development, there cannot be enduring peace. Peace and justice are prerequisites for progress. We must acknowledge a principal lesson of the MDGs, that peace and access to justice are not only fundamental human rights aspirations, but cornerstones of sustainable development. Those words were said by the UN High-Level Panel on post-2015 Development Agenda, introduced stable and peaceful societies as goal in its own right. So, I will share with you the link from the panel report on 2015. It's the full report in PDF. You can read it down. And in the main page of post 2015, you can also find the version in Spanish and other languages. This one is in English. One of the best ways to end poverty is to prevent conflicts. As the 2011 World Development Report on Conflict, Security and Development revealed, and here is the link to the full report, 1 in 4 people in the planet live in areas affected by repeated cycles of political and criminal violence. People in fragile and conflict-affected situations are more than twice as likely to be undernourished as those in other developing countries, more than 3 times as likely to be unable to send their children to school, twice as likely to see their children die before the age of 5, and more than twice as likely to lack of clean water. If you remember, at the beginning of the session, we mentioned it. All these situations have one of different indexes considered to measure the multidimensional poor in the world. All in all, half of all child deaths occurs in conflict-affected areas, and I could go on citing examples and statistics. Uh, you can say it's really boring statistic, but in this case, it gives you a clean picture of poverty situation. All in all, as it is shown in poorest countries in the world, are also the areas with the highest levels of conflicts and violence, which becomes them more and more fragile, impacting definitively on the levels of poverty in terms of poverty reduction and therefore peace building. It's, nothing is separated, everything is attached to this cycle of violence. So for poverty reduction to achieve our goals from Agenda 2030. Poverty is the first goal. It's in the you know uh, bottom line, but it means of the pyramid, and it's very important to focus that and to be aware and to have in mind that poverty has not only one cause, and all the causes and all the roots that cause poverty are as equal as are important, because we have to face all these issues uh, at the same time. We cannot go one thing then another, or disregard others causes or situations that cause poverty. Okay, we are now going to the end of this session. Uh, so before closing, I want to share with you some questions I ask myself too. How do you think World One is affected by promoting the culture of peace? And how important do you think is the goal one itself to make Agenda 2030 move forward to a more peaceful world? Um, these are questions that I make to myself. We made ourselves a lot of questions, but I just want to start with these two ones. It's very important that we can share, that we can compare, and that we spread the word. It's really important to know what is going on. So, and what you think about that. It's not a single answer. Probably should be uh, so much answers as people uh, is in this world actually. So it's very important to commit, to express ourselves, to have and share spaces, and of course to act. So, as few notes before closing the session, uh, I will copy in the chat box uh, few links or on more material, and some of the materials we share on the session, and other ones, if you have the chance or time, or you feel curious, there are a lot of things to read to get more information about this uh, poverty issue, the poverty, the causes, and this worldwide overview I wanted to share with you on this session. Um, Thank you for being patient with this first session. Actually, in not the best background possible, but we will go for the next session deepen on the topic of poverty. The session that is being held the next week uh, would be advertised in the websites as you have it on the chat box. You can go to iodopop.net, which is the pop portal, and you can go to www.iodoworld.org, which is the organization portal. Wherever you feel like to share, to ask, or to consider with the audience on this session, or further information, you can contact us through our websites. So far, we are finishing. I expect this was a little bit insight of what is going on worldwide. Um, Thank you for your time again. I am happy to host the session to share and will be even more happier to hear from you about this session and on the next one, next Thursday. Thank you very much and see you. Bye bye.